Hello everyone, my name is Clyde, and in today's video we are going to be continuing our discussion on the changes to Supercontainers that just rolled out in World of Warships. After loads of player feedback, Wargaming announced on May 5th, 2023 that they would be adjusting their planned changes to Supercontainers, this time for the betterment of players. So good job everyone for providing excellent feedback, and Wargaming, thank you for listening at least a little bit to the players. Today we're going to talk about these new changes and dive a little deeper into why Wargaming was planning on changing Supercontainers in the first place, and then we'll speculate a little bit wildly about how this affects their fourth quarter earnings. Seriously, let's not waste any time. Here's a chart that shows the pre-12.4 Supercontainers compared to the Supercontainers that now exist in the game. The chart represents the result of opening 3 million new containers versus 1.5 million of the old containers, just like we did in the previous video that we put out on the Supercontainer change. This comparison is based on the grounds that through normal operations, you're going to receive about twice as many Supercontainers as you did in the old way. As you can see, there are no more gray bonuses in the updated containers, which is great. Thank you, Wargaming, again. And we can see several green percentages in the column on the right. These green percentages indicate an increase with the new containers compared to the old, at least in the long run, for the given resource that is on the left. A number of you had asked me either in YouTube comments, on my Discord, or over on Twitch to make an updated version of this table, so here it is for your viewing pleasure. But if we take a look at the math, I'm just going to leave that in. If we take a look at the math, it's clear to see that Wargaming directly reduced the availability of two things. Number one, doubloons, and number two, premium time, and not really by small margins. These are the things that you buy from Wargaming with real money that you earned at your real job, and these are basically Wargaming's core products. If you walked into a Wargaming themed convenience store, most of the shelves would be covered with doubloons or premium time. Yes, near the cash register there would be some futuristic looking Japanese soda machine covered with anime captains, and there might be a pack of 40k themed bubble gum, or maybe a Transformers calculator watch. Look, I don't really know. Those are all oddball like promotional items though. The meat and potatoes of their sales is stuff like premium time and doubloons. At least that's what I think. Now, I'm no economist. I don't study economies, I don't play one on TV, but I do enjoy a really good thought experiment from time to time. So let's wander over and visit the speculation zone with an exercise of the mind. While we don't really know Wargaming's specific goal for making these changes, we do know that they're targeting doubloons and premium time. And I know that before I even finished that sentence, several of you threw your cell phone into a toilet and shouted at me through the water, "Clyde, you idiot! It's because of profits, corporate greed, ripping off players." And honestly, maybe you're right. In fact, it's almost certainly about profits, about cash flow, about revenue, fourth quarter sales. Listen, there's a guy named Eliyahu Goldratt, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, who in 1984 wrote a book called The Goal. One of my bosses a few years ago asked me to read it, and I did. You're welcome, Dave. Anyway, it talks about the goal of every company in the world, and that goal is to make money. Now, of course, I'm excluding things like nonprofit organizations or charities, etc. from this list. We're talking about companies that exist to make money, to provide jobs, and to issue paychecks. This is most companies in the world, and they all have one goal, and that is to make money. They may have other goals like to produce the highest quality products or to delight their customers with fun or engaging experiences. But at the end of the day, all of those are just the methods by which they've chosen to make money, the methods that they've chosen to use to achieve the goal. Wargaming told us in a recent devblog article why they changed the Supercontainer contents. In the blog, they called out doubloons as a particular concern for the company, stating that an increase in the amount of this resource in circulation could negatively affect the economy in the long run because of the risk of doubloon inflation. Essentially, they said players were getting a lot of Supercontainers during annual events, like the anniversary event where you can get one Supercontainer for each tier 10 or super ship in your port. This got me thinking, how long have they been doing that? So I did some research to find out. While much of the game's seasonal event history is poorly documented, I was able to find a few old YouTube videos which indicated that most likely the first time we received anniversary Supercontainers was for the game's second anniversary in 2017. This means we've been getting an annual Supercontainer dump every year for the past 6 years, with this fall being the 7th year. In 2017, when they started this whole thing, there were 18 tier 10 ships in World of Warships. Today, in May of 2023, there are now 88 tier 10 ships in the game. And in 2022, Wargaming released the first 14 super ships, of which there are now 16. During last year's 7th anniversary event, we also got a super container for every super ship we had in port as well for the first time ever. The availability in terms of both quantity of ships and the pace of acquisition of those ships for players is higher now in World of Warships than it has ever been. Players can earn tier 10s by grinding tech tree lines, and simultaneously, that is, in parallel, they're also collecting coal, they're earning steel, they're earning credits and free XP, which can be used to get even more tier 10s from the Armory and the Research Bureau. This means that there are 5.8 times as many super container yielding ships than there were in the game when they started this whole nonsense of giving us a super container for every top tier ship to celebrate the game's anniversary. Now, provided you've doffed your tinfoil hat, these are the player numbers that Wargaming is looking at when they make decisions about the game's economy. Their own data suggests that the number of players has increased steadily since April of 2018, although that growth has been modest. It is far less than the explosive growth of the number of top-tier ships that has occurred during that same time period. I measured the height of the left side of the graph in pixels and compared it to the height of the right side of the graph in order to understand the measure of the growth of players that has happened according to Wargaming. Assuming the y-axis is linear and not logarithmic or something weird like that, Wargaming's own data suggests that the growth in players is about 12.2% since April of 2018. Now, in that same time period, the number of 10s and supers went from 19 ships to 104 ships, an increase of 85 ships, or a 447.4% increase in the number of ships. Now, I know that not everybody has all of those ships. I myself only have 58 tier 10s and 8 super ships. But in 2017, most players didn't have all of the tier 10s then either. If we look at those super container opening videos I found from the 2nd anniversary, only one of those creators had all of the then available 17 ships. The other two only had 16 unlocked apiece. Now, I don't know a whole lot about Wargaming's revenue today compared with 2017. Again, this entire video is being spent deep inside the speculation zone, but if we assume that the average player is spending about the same amount of money on the game as they were back then we would need to have about 4.5 times as many players in the game today for the growth in ships to not affect the company's bottom line. Of course, if Wargaming's monetization strategies have been wildly successful and everyone is paying 4 or 5 times as much to play WoWs as they used to, then all bets are off, but I just cannot believe that that is the case. While they have rolled out some new ways to fund accelerating your progress in the game, such as Battle Pass, they've basically never raised a price since 2015. 30 days of premium time has cost $9.99 US since the very beginning. I also did a bunch of research on ship prices, and by and large, using both cash and doubloons, the cost of ships has basically never changed. In fact, ships bought for cash got a little bit cheaper as they aged, and ships for doubloons have never changed prices, at least in all of the old screenshots I was able to find. Okay, we're almost done, I promise. Story time. I work for a large technology organization, and I have been responsible for the technical execution of millions of dollars worth of work in my career. In participation of all of this work, it has become incredibly clear to me that organizations have budgets, just like you, me, and everybody else that you know. If you'll trust me, I promise we're going somewhere with this. Just hang with me. Businesses pay employees, they pay their benefits. Some would argue, of course, that they pay taxes. Some would say that they don't pay taxes. We'll leave that for somewhere else on the internet to argue about. They pay leases for their facilities. They buy computers. They maintain networks. They invest in software licenses. They train their team members. They pay electricity and water bills. They advertise. They hire community managers and software engineers and usability engineers. They hire accountants and other bean counters, and they make sure that there's coffee in the break room. Being a business is expensive. Ready for a little bit more speculation? This is kind of a big one here. Hang with me. One thing that organizations like is steady and consistent income to pay for all of that stuff. Just like me and you, I want my paycheck to be consistent. I would like it to go up, but I want it to at least be consistent so that I can build a budget around it and understand and anticipate my expenses. They want to have a trusted source of income every single month, every quarter, every fiscal fortnight, or whatever. This is what Premium Time and Battle Pass are all about. Those are recurring purchases that players make that allow Wargaming to have a consistent stream of income. People buying premium ships or whatever is only consistent if you're releasing ships constantly, which we've been seeing a lot of lately. Now, I'm not asking you to feel sorry for a corporation. That's ridiculous nonsense. What I am asking you to do is join me on this little thought experiment as we walk to its logical conclusion. This way, later on, when we go, oh yeah, sure, but like screw those guys or whatever, we can legitimately say we've thought through this entire problem all the way through. Here's the speculation. I think it's worth considering that the impact of giving out millions of supercontainers has a negative impact on the organization's budget. If we assume that your average player has, I don't know, a third of the top tier ships, and I know that might be a little high, but it's okay, it's close enough, then that means that your average player has 35 ships from which they can earn a supercontainer. If that's true, then Wargaming only needs 28,571 active players in order for them to be on the hook for giving out 1 million supercontainers. And I bet you they have more active players than that. So if we further assume that they have, let's say 150,000 active players globally, and I think that's probably a pretty cautious estimate, remembering, of course, that only the tiniest fraction of the player base watches YouTube and Twitch as consistently as most of you guys and I do. That means that every year they could potentially be on the hook for giving out 5,250,000 supercontainers, okay? Let's assume that only 60% of those containers are claimed. Some players might not play enough to unlock all their rewards, and others might just not log in for a while, or maybe they're taking a little break, even though they're still considered an active player. And it seems to be that every year around that time, we've got a pretty big influx of players who come back to the game only to claim their anniversary rewards. They play for a couple of months and whatever. Again, all of this is complete speculation, but even after saying that we only claim 60% of the available containers, that's still 3,150,000 containers claimed. All right, we're gonna keep going. If Wargaming gives out 3,150,000 containers per year, with the old boxes, they were basically giving out this much money. That's a lot of money. This is all based on my software simulation that opened 3,150,000 containers. With the new containers, of course, the totals will be reduced. We saw the numbers earlier. My previous simulation showed a reduction of
35 to 42%
for doubloons and premium time. If we use the new containers, Wargaming is going to give out this much money. Now, some of you are shouting at your screen right now, yeah, but Clyde, it's all virtual pixel merchandise. It doesn't even cost them anything. Why do they feel the need to nerf these supercontainers, man? Well, the reason is that even though it's virtual pixel merchandise that doesn't cost anything, it does cost them something. These estimates above are of course entirely made up, and they're probably rather inaccurate, but they're almost certainly within an order of magnitude of correct. They are probably somewhat realistic, or even if they're not, they can kind of give us an idea of what we're thinking about here. Wargaming, let's say my numbers are right, and Wargaming is going to give out 900,000 US dollars worth of doubloons and premium time for the anniversary event. That act doesn't cost them anything directly. It's a database insertion. They go to your account, they add some numbers, an integer goes up, and now you've got more doubloons, or now you've got more premium time, or whatever. But players who receive those dubs, players who receive that premium, are not going to spend as much money in September, and maybe not in October either. The result is a measurable dip in revenue for that quarter, for fourth quarter, for Wargaming. Can they afford it? I mean, of course they can afford it. They've been doing it for 7 years, but does it result in a less consistent stream of funds for them? And remember we said before, companies and individuals like me, we like to have consistent trusted income streams with limited variability. Hey guys, Clyde the editor here. I just wanted to jump in and make a point here that I didn't make very hard in the original video. The reason why businesses like consistent, steady streams of income is because their expenses tend to be consistent and steady. Their rents are always going to be the same, or they may even go up if things like property taxes, etc., increase. Employees tend to cost the same or more over time as they gain skills and get raises. All of your utility bills, your electricity bills, your software licensing bills, your training costs, all of this stuff tends to increase over time, not go down. You never have a bill that's fluctuate, or not very commonly do you have a bill that fluctuates, right? Your rent isn't $800 cheaper one month, then $1,000 more expensive the next month, then $250 cheaper. It's very consistent. So when these bill collectors stick their hands out and they want money, you need to have money to give that to them. That's why that consistency of income is so comforting for individuals as well as for businesses. So anyway, I just wanted to hit that point a little bit harder here because I feel like it might have fallen through the cracks in the original video. Okay, let's get back to Clyde, the guy who wrote a script and tried to record it and do it all correctly the first time but didn't. Now look, I don't know the CEO of Wargaming. Maybe he's a really rich dude who lives in a Scrooge McDuck style money bin, and he was going to use the Supercontainer savings to go buy another Ivory back scratcher.
And I was going to buy that Ivory back scratcher.
But here's what I do think. I think that the rewards given out for the anniversary event have outpaced player growth. And in part, that's because the content additions to the game have really accelerated, in particular, since 2021. I think the result is a large number of top-tier ships, which earn players supercontainers, which in turn result in a direct and undesirable impact on Wargaming's revenue, meaning that they have a dip in income right after this event. And I think they noticed that. I have absolutely no concrete evidence, but I would suggest that this makes their fourth quarter earnings take a little dive up until the holiday event in December, when things start firing up and people start spending money again. On the flip side, and this is super speculation, one could theorize that the anniversary event actually is beneficial to Wargaming because players get a few trinkets and they don't spend much money for a couple of months and they get really comfortable, and then when Santa boxes appear around December time, they go, ooh, I haven't spent any money on WoWs in a while, I guess I can splurge. But that's just old Clyde spinning yarns and spreading conspiracy theories. So what I want to know is, what do you think? Hopefully, if you made it this far in the video, you enjoyed your time here, and maybe if you had considered all of this, you found it enlightening or interesting, or maybe you think I'm full of it. I suppose all of those are possible. Obviously, whether or not this is good is entirely, I guess, up to you. Like, what do you think? Hit me up in the comments and let me know what your thoughts are on this. I will try to answer a bunch of these comments. I can't always get to everyone, but hey, while we're in there, by the way, if we could keep it classy, that would be great. I know this is a topic that gets people's blood pumping, and if you need a couple of minutes to cool out before hitting the keyboard, maybe take a little walk around the neighborhood. It'd be good for your health. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Be cool, be nice, take care of each other, and we will see you in our next live stream, video, or battle captains. Take care.